What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT. We got a really jam-packed episode tonight. All right, we got NFL Week 5 and college football Week 6 previews and predictions. We also are going to dive into a couple of NFL topics. Are the Eagles pretenders? Is Taylor Swift a distraction to the Kansas City Chiefs' success? And some more things as well. But before we begin, if you haven't already, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We go live Sunday through Wednesday at 9 p.m., 9:30 Eastern time. So go ahead, hit the bell icon so you don't miss when we upload new content or when we go live. Remember that we're not just a YouTube channel. You can find us on all podcasting platforms, wherever you get your podcasts from, Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Every single episode of the JT Sports Podcast that's uploaded on YouTube is available in audio format on all podcasting platforms. So go ahead, check out the JT Sports Podcast. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, we would greatly appreciate it if you give us a 5-star review. We're trying to get to 100 5-star reviews by the end of October. So if you enjoy and you want to support us, go ahead, give us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. All you got to do is type in the JT Sports Podcast and it will pop up, or you can go down to the description down below and there will be links to the Apple and Spotify versions of the podcast. Shout out to everybody in the chat tonight, man. We got a lot of people in the live stream tonight. Go ahead, if you just joined, then give us a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ever since Travis Kelce bagged Taylor Swift and their relationship became public, all you see, anytime you see the Kansas City Chiefs go to commercial break, right after, they got the cameras zoomed in on Taylor Swift. It's like they show Taylor Swift just as much as they show the commercials during the games. And sometimes I be trying to figure out, what is the NFL? Is this more than just football? Is this also a soap opera as well? Because I don't recall the last time the National Football League has been this invested in the player's love life. But I guess since it's Taylor Swift and she brings in so many ratings and so much attention, of course, the NFL has to give her a little bit of camera time. But when you think about her impact on the Kansas City Chiefs, could she kind of be a little bit of a distraction to this team? Because Travis Kelce isn't just dating a random woman. All right, let's just call this shit what it is. He's dating one of the most popular women on planet Earth, and Taylor Swift. Before Travis Kelce went public with this, or before it came out that they were in a relationship together and it was official, this man, you go to his Instagram comments and you see nothing but diehard football fans in the comment section. Now you go to his comment section on Instagram and you see nothing but Taylor Swift fans. There are literally Taylor Swift fans out there that have never watched a single down of football until they find out that Travis Kelce was Taylor Swift's boyfriend. Okay? So a lot of people are tuning in to Kansas City Chiefs games, not just because they want to see Taylor Swift, but also because they want to see Taylor Swift's boyfriend. If you go and you look at the NFL's ratings for all of the games week by week, ever since we first saw Taylor Swift make her NFL camera debut against the Chicago Bears, the ratings have been through the roof for any game that the Kansas City Chiefs play in. Every game that the Chiefs are in is always the highest rated. They get more views than any of the teams that get primetime slots. And last week on Monday Night Football, that was one of the most highest viewed regular season Sunday Night Football games that we've had in a very long time. People are invested in the Kansas City Chiefs, but apparently people seem to be pretty invested into this whole Taylor Swift angle that the NFL is really starting to dive into. Like, why are we giving Taylor Swift so much camera time? This is about football. We come to see the NFL. We come to watch our favorite teams play and our favorite players knock each other in the head. But of course, Taylor Swift, since he just has this huge level of popularity, I mean, you go on her Instagram page, she got like 7-8 million likes every single post. So, of course, there's going to be a huge audience that tunes in to see if Taylor Swift is going to be in attendance, and there's going to be people who are going to be interested in seeing how well Travis Kelce does. But as far as this being a distraction, I don't really see how anybody can really view this as a distraction. You got to remember that the Kansas City Chiefs are a team that's always locked in. They don't really get off focus, or they don't really lack concentration in most situations. In most games that they go in, they're well prepared, they're focused, and they're dialed in. And Travis Kelce is one of the greatest players in NFL history. He's arguably the best tight end to ever play this game, depending on who you ask. And when you have a player that has Travis Kelce's, resume and career, you don't really have to worry about them getting distracted due to them dating Taylor Swift. Even Patrick Mahomes was in the Netflix quarterback documentary, and that wasn't a distraction for him at all because they won the Super Bowl. So if Patrick Mahomes can lead the Kansas City Chiefs to the Super Bowl, being one of the 3 quarterbacks featured in the Netflix quarterback docuseries, why can't Travis Kelce still have a really great season and still help Kansas City be a championship team this year with Taylor Swift at the helm being his girlfriend? I don't really see how this is a big distraction. Now, in terms of you fans who tune into these games to watch the Kansas City Chiefs, okay, it could be a little bit of a distraction to you because you don't really give a fuck about Taylor Swift. You tune in to watch the damn Chiefs play. Who gives a hell about Taylor Swift? Okay, but you gotta understand that with her bringing in so much attention and her boosting the ratings, of course the NFL has to give her a little bit of camera time. But as far as this being a distraction to the Kansas City Chiefs winning ways, I don't really see how this is going to affect them negatively in any way. As a matter of fact, I think that there's more positives to take from this situation than there are negatives. The only negatives that you can say is that, Taylor Swift is just going to bring too much attention and too much paparazzi around Travis Kelce. He's not going to be focused. When you're a Hall of Fame caliber player, there are certain things that you do that no matter what happens in your life, they can't get thrown off. There are certain habits that Travis Kelce has developed throughout his NFL career that nobody can throw off. It's a routine. It's a regimen. And for Travis Kelce, being a future Hall of Famer, you can expect that he's not going to be one who gets distracted just because he has a super popular girlfriend that's really attractive. Now, if this was Tony Romo, I remember a couple of years ago, one of my mama's friends was telling me about how Tony Romo was dating this high-profile celebrity, and she kind of became a distraction for him, and when they broke up, he ended up playing better. But I don't think this is the same situation with Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce isn't just an ordinary NFL player dating a superstar celebrity. This is one of the most accomplished players in the NFL at his respective position. He knows what it takes to be a great player, and he knows what it takes to be focused and dialed in. I don't question Travis Kelce being able to not be distracted by his love life. Okay, this isn't his first relationship. For him dating Taylor Swift isn't really that big of a difference from him dating anybody else. But to us, we look at it differently because we're like, oh shit, Travis Kelce, you're dating Taylor Swift? What? But to Travis Kelce, he's just chilling. He's not really making a big deal of it. I was watching a podcast that Travis Kelce recently appeared on. I forgot the name of it, but he actually was a little bit surprised that so many people had so much interest in his relationship with Taylor Swift. It's just the fact that she brings in so much attention and she boosts the ratings up so much, you got to give her a little bit of shine. But as far as her keeping the Kansas City Chiefs from being able to win the championship, I don't really see that happening. And you got to remember that Taylor Swift, all she's doing is being in the press box. How is Taylor Swift going to negatively affect Travis Kelce's performance from watching him in the press box? It's not like she's on the sideline and she's chilling with his family. I mean, if you have one of your family members, or you have a loved one, or you're in a relationship with somebody and they want to come to the games, they have the ability to come to the games and to support you. That's what your significant other is supposed to do. So what do you want Taylor Swift to do? Not show up to the games and not support her man? Come on, man. Like, I think the people that think this is a distraction just are a little bit annoyed with the fact that Taylor Swift is stealing a little bit of camera time from some of these coaches and some of the camera cuts that they make on the sidelines to some of the players. I think that Taylor Swift is really good business for the NFL. Somebody told me that Taylor Swift needs the NFL and the NFL needs Taylor Swift. I don't think it's that situation at all. Taylor Swift doesn't need the NFL. Taylor Swift is literally one of the most popular women in the whole entire planet Earth. She doesn't need the NFL. Now, of course, it's a little bit of free publicity and a little bit of free marketing. Of course, she's going to take that. But let's not act like Taylor Swift is becoming a bigger star than what she already was prior to dating Travis Kelce. Like, most of us knew who the hell Taylor Swift was. Now, for the NFL, I do think that they gained a little bit from this. I still don't think that Taylor Swift being at these NFL games is really a giant boost to the NFL and the bigger picture of things, because at the end of the day, the NFL was still the most popular sport in America prior to Taylor Swift dating Travis Kelce. So at the end of the day, I don't really think that the NFL needs Taylor Swift, and I don't think Taylor Swift needs the NFL. Both of these two operating individuals or entities are perfectly fine without one another. They don't need one another to survive. It's just that it doesn't hurt to have Taylor Swift in attendance at these Kansas City Chiefs games. She's going to support one of the most popular players in the NFL who happens to play on one of the most popular teams in professional sports. And you couple that with the fact that she's one of the most popular women in the whole entire earth, of course the ratings are going to be through the roof. And the ratings that the Kansas City Chiefs bring in compared to any of the other NFL games are not even close. So, of course, the NFL is going to try to milk this thing and try to juice it as much as possible. She's bringing ratings, a boost in merchandise, ticket sales, and popularity. You'd be dumb not to try to capitalize off the whole Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift relationship when it's bringing in so much attention and so much revenue. Money drives everything, whether you want to admit it or not. And Taylor Swift, she's bringing money to the NFL. These Taylor Swift fans, the Swifties, that's what they call themselves. They're buying Travis Kelce jerseys. They're tuning into Chiefs games just to see if Taylor Swift is going to be shown on camera and to see what Travis Kelce does. I think that this is a good situation for everybody involved. Travis Kelce is happy. The Chiefs are getting more money and more revenue, and the NFL is getting more money and revenue as well. So I don't think that this is a distraction for the Kansas City Chiefs. They got a really good head coach in Andy Reid. They got a really good locker room. I think that these players, when it comes to being ready on Sundays, you don't really have to question their preparation. You don't have to question, are they going to be locked in? Travis Kelce is a future Hall of Famer for a reason. He's arguably the best tight end that ever played this game for a reason. I don't think that him dating Taylor Swift is a major distraction from him or for him. Despite being one of the two unbeaten teams left in the NFL right now, there seems to be this sentiment getting thrown around about the Philadelphia Eagles that they're pretenders or they're frauds because they don't win in dominating fashion. You know, they barely beat the Patriots week 1, 25-20. They got past the Vikings 34-28 week 2. They got a pretty solid victory against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I thought that was a pretty dominant win. They beat them 25-11, and the Buccaneers currently are the first place team in the NFC South. And then they beat the Commanders in overtime 34-31. I get that Philadelphia doesn't look as dominant as what they did last year, but I don't think that makes them frauds. All right, we have to be very careful when it comes to labeling teams pretenders or frauds. The Philadelphia Eagles, If you were to look at their roster and compare it to the rest of the NFL, they got the most talented roster in the whole entire league. The only teams that rival Philadelphia in roster talent are probably the 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys, and that's it. So when it comes to Philadelphia, you know that from a talent standpoint, they're a good enough team to be able to compete for a championship. But the problem that people keep referring to that they say Philadelphia has is that when you look at the turnover that they dealt with during this past offseason, losing both coordinators, Jonathan Gannon to the Arizona Cardinals, and you have Shane Steichen, who now is the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. And anytime you lose two outstanding coordinators, it definitely is going to be a pretty big loss. But at the same time, though, the Philadelphia Eagles have a veteran team. They got a lot of veteran players on that locker room. Yeah, you do have a good amount of young players in there, such as Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, and whatnot, Nakobe Dean. But for the most part, I think that the Philadelphia Eagles have reached a point that, you know, they're going to lose some talented coordinators every once in a while, but they're going to be able to employ good coordinators to replace those guys because they're the Philadelphia Eagles. And with them being one of the best franchises in the NFL, there are going to be plenty of coordinator candidates that are going to be highly regarded, that are going to want the opportunity to coach at Philly, because they know that if they do well, they more times than likely are going to become a head coach. The coordinators that Philly currently has right now, they aren't as good as Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen, but I don't really think they're that bad. And I think that too many people make too much fuss over, you know, point differential, margin of victory. Who gives a damn about being dominant? I care about the team that wins the fucking game. That's all that really matters at the end of the day, the wins and the losses. And the Philadelphia Eagles are 4-0. To call this team a pretender is disrespectful to me. All right? They're 4-0 for a reason. You're not a 4-0 team if you have a weak coaching staff or if you have a weak roster. They're not 4-0 because they're a fraud football team. They're 4-0 because they're one of the most talented teams in the whole entire National Football League, and point differential doesn't completely define how good the team is. The New England Patriots had one of the best point differentials in NFL history and got smacked by the New York Giants in the Super Bowl. Not once, but twice, to Eli Manning. So that just goes to show you that just because you look dominant in the regular season, that doesn't mean that you're just going to completely dominate for the whole entire playoffs and you're just automatically going to win the Super Bowl. There's a reason why the games get played. I think it's kind of idiotic to label a team of fraud that's undefeated right now and currently has one of the best rosters in the NFL. Yeah, you don't really like the fact that Nick Sirianni is more of a general manager in the sense, in terms of how he runs the football team. He kind of just oversees everything. And I know general manager isn't the proper term for it. I think they refer to it as a CEO kind of head coach. He doesn't really get hands-on with anything. He more so just hires coordinators and lets those guys do their jobs. And, you know, he just micromanages everything. But I don't really think that's necessarily a bad thing. It's like if he could hire Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon, why can't these other coordinators that he have potentially become good hires? You see, like, too many people get wrapped up in these early season takes or these early season wins or losses when at the end of the day, the pretenders start to separate themselves from the contenders around Thanksgiving. So we truly aren't going to know just how great of a team Philadelphia is until we get to the later portion of this season around November. That's when we're really going to have a good idea of who Philadelphia is. But right now, calling this team frauds, pretenders, I think that's ridiculous. They're undefeated. It doesn't matter how they win. They're winning games. And even last year, early during the season, they didn't dominate everybody. They barely beat the Detroit Lions week 1 last year. They beat the Lions 38-35 week 1 of the 2022 NFL season. They barely beat the Jaguars. They beat them 29-21. They barely beat the damn Arizona Cardinals. They beat them 20-17 early last season. So it's not like Philadelphia was just running through everybody on their whole entire schedule. And it's funny how people are trying to ask the question, are the Philadelphia Eagles legitimate contenders with the way that they're winning and how disappointing their new coaching hires have been? But nobody kept that same energy when the Dallas Cowboys lost to the Arizona Cardinals. You know, the Cowboys lost to the Arizona Cardinals, and then all of a sudden, they win against the New England Patriots, and now everybody's back on the Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl hype train. But we don't want to have that same level of realism when it comes to evaluating the Philadelphia Eagles and where they rank in the Super Bowl conversation. It's really idiotic to label this team a pretender because they don't win convincingly. Who gives a damn about winning convincingly in the NFL? The majority of NFL games are decided by one possession, regardless of how good of a team you are. The Kansas City Chiefs were supposed to blow out the New York Jets, and yet they nearly lost to them. And Zach Wilson had the best game of his career. And yet nobody's calling the Kansas City Chiefs pretenders. Not every single team is the same team that they were last year. You see, the NFL is always changing. It's always a forever evolving game. Just because the Philadelphia Eagles were a more dominant team last year when they made it to the Super Bowl doesn't mean that they're going to have the same level of dominance if they make it back to the Super Bowl this year. You don't get the same team twice back-to-back years. Every team normally has a new identity of some sort. Now, there are still certain things with the Philadelphia Eagles that you know are forever going to be there, such as having great quarterback play, a good offensive line, one of the best receiving cores in the NFL, and you got a pretty talented defense, even though the defense has dropped off pretty slightly. I don't think it's a big drop off, but this definitely isn't the same elite defense that we saw last year. This secondary isn't as good as what it was in 2022, but in hindsight, when I'm looking at the Philadelphia Eagles, I think that they have a good enough team that it's kind of dumb to label them frauds or pretenders because they don't win as convincingly as you think they should. Yeah, the Dallas Cowboys make it look nice when they blow out teams that they're supposed to blow out, but are they going to be able to beat the San Francisco 49ers? Are they going to be able to beat some of the best teams in the league when it matters? That's all that really matters at the end of the day. The Philadelphia Eagles are unbeaten. They're undefeated. They're not pretenders. They're not frauds. They are legitimate Super Bowl contenders. We need to stop trying to nitpick great teams. People have the tendency early in the season to nitpick and overly criticize great teams and give too much praise way too early to teams that haven't really proven anything. Like, you saw how quick people were to anoint the Miami Dolphins to be the next best thing in the AFC East. And they got trounced by the Buffalo Bills this past weekend. So the national media, they got a tendency just to be overly critical of great teams that already have proven themselves. And they have a tendency to overhype teams that aren't really that proven. I think the Philadelphia Eagles aren't pretenders. I don't care about the turnover that they've had on the coaching staff. They're 4-0 right now. They may not be as dominant as what they were last year, but all that matters is that they're 4-0, they're winning games, and I still like them to make it out of the NFC this year. After a surprising 3-0 start to the season, the Colorado Buffaloes find themselves on a 2-game losing streak. And the other night when I went live, there was a subscriber who asked me, JT, what are your thoughts on Colorado's chances of making it to a bowl game now with them having a 2-game losing streak? Well, here are my thoughts. Okay, I still believe in Coach Prime. And I told you guys all off season, before the season even started, that Colorado was going to win at least 6-7 games this year. And it's funny how now people are now starting to catch on and people are trying to call me a bandwagon, but I've been on the Deion Sanders hype train before this thing even left station, and best believe I'm not changing up just because they lost to Oregon and Colorado. I actually think that Colorado losing those 2 games was the best thing to happen because now we got all the damn casuals out of the way. Now we don't have to deal with any more of the Deion Sanders haters saying, oh, Colorado is overhyped and overrated. They lost to USC and Oregon when they never were expected to beat those two teams anyway. Those two teams are competing for a spot in the college football playoffs this year. Nobody expected Colorado to win more than 3.5 games this year. Okay, it's not like people came into this season saying, oh, hell yeah, like the Buffs are finna win the national championship this year. Like, I don't get where this narrative is coming from that Colorado is overhyped and overrated. Like, of course, they're going to get a lot of media attention because it's Deion damn Sanders. People want to see Deion Sanders. You want to know why? Because he's one of the most recognizable athletes in the whole entire globe. And plus, he's an NFL Hall of Famer. He's the best cornerback to ever play the game of football, in my opinion. So, of course, people want to tune in to see what Deion Sanders has going at Boulder. When it comes to Colorado and them being able to go bowling this year, I think they have a great opportunity to do so. And I still believe that they're going to be a bowl-eligible team. Their next 2 games are against 2 of the worst teams, not just in the Pac-12 conference, but in all the Power 5. Arizona State, they're in rebuild mode. Just like Deion Sanders, Kenny Dillingham, he also used the transfer portal pretty heavy to overhaul Arizona State's roster. It's just that the players that he got in the transfer portal aren't as good as the players that Deion Sanders was able to get out of the transfer portal. I'm pretty confident that Colorado is going to handle Arizona State. Then they got Stanford. So then, going into their bye week, you potentially could be a 5-2 team. And then you will only need 1 more win to become bowl eligible. Now, that 1 win is going to become increasingly difficult to get coming off that bye. You got UCLA on the road, you got Oregon State, Arizona at home, and then your final 2 games of the season are on the road against Washington State and Utah, which are going to be some really tough road games. But I'm pretty confident that Colorado is going to at least be able to beat at least UCLA, Oregon State, or Washington State. Now, I don't know about Utah. I'm pretty sure they can beat Arizona, but Utah is a really difficult place to win at. And plus, they play some really good defense, and they are really good up front. And they're going through a lot of injuries right now, but by that point of the season, late, I think that Utah probably should be as healthy as they have been all year. So I think Colorado probably loses that game. But outside of that game against Utah, there's not really a single game that I see on the remainder of Colorado's schedule that I don't think they have a chance of winning. Honestly, I mean, they're going to beat Arizona State and Stanford. I think we can be pretty confident about that. And I think that they can pull off an upset or 2 against UCLA. UCLA has a true freshman quarterback, and they don't really have that great of a team this year. They're like a middle of the road Pac-12 team. I think that the teams that Colorado is going to end up facing after their bye week are going to be more so on the same level as them. All right, UCLA, Oregon State is viewed to be one of the better teams in this conference, but I don't really think they're all that great. DJ Uiagalelei is still kind of the same quarterback that he was at Clemson. Although he's a little bit better, he's still really inaccurate at times, sloppy footwork, questionable decision making. So I'm pretty confident that Colorado could pull off an upset in that game. And then they got to play Arizona. Now, Arizona, that game could go either way. Same thing with the Oregon State game. But all I'm trying to say is that Colorado's chances of making it to a bowl game are still fairly realistic. And I think that is easily attainable. If Colorado gets the 6 wins, you know that they probably going to have to pull off a big upset. Who is that most likely going to come against? Probably Arizona. But even then, they beat Arizona. I'm not convinced that that's just all. I'm convinced that they can beat any other team outside of Utah. Oregon State isn't great, and neither is Washington State all that much, even though they are playing good right now. But I think Washington State probably is like a 9-win team at best this year. So I think that Colorado, when you look at the talent differential between them and the remainder teams that they have on this schedule for this season, there's not really a big talent gap As a matter of fact, there's not really a talent gap at all. The remaining teams that they played this year, they're either better than talent-wise or they have the same amount of talent as them. So I'm taking Colorado to still go bowling. I don't know why you people keep asking me, oh, you believe in Deion still? You believe in Coach Prime? You still on the Buffs hype train? Like, you people ask me this every day in my DMs on Instagram, and I keep telling you fools every single day, I still believe in Coach Prime. I was never an unrealistic fan. I was always pretty realistic. People said that I was unrealistic picking Colorado to win 6-7 games, right? And they're on pace to do that. People said I was being unrealistic when I picked them to upset TCU week 1. Like, everybody else keeps saying everybody was wrong about Deion Sanders. I wasn't. I was actually bold enough and had enough balls to actually come on here and make some bold predictions about Colorado versus just taking the conservative route and just saying, oh yeah, like Colorado's not going to make it to a bowl game. Like, we just never seen anything like this. You want to know why? Because I actually trust Deion Sanders. I believe in Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders is a Hall of Famer for a reason. Like, he's played under some of the greatest coaches that ever coached the game of football. Not just in college football, but in the NFL as well. And every time you ask any of those Hall of Fame coaches to talk about Deion Sanders, they always have a smile on their face. They talk about somebody who was dedicated, had an A1 work ethic, was A1 when it came to a mentality with how he practiced. And he also carries those same intangibles over to being a head coach. He's actually a head coach that knows how to bring the best out of his players. So Colorado, I'm pretty confident they're going to go bowling this year. Before we move on to our college football preview and predictions, if you haven't already, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We go live Sunday through Wednesday. We go live Mondays and Sundays after the Sunday and Monday night games, and we go live at 9:35 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Make sure that you're subscribed and that you got post notifications turned on so you don't miss when we go live and when we upload new content. All right, so I want to get into a couple of college football preview and predictions. We're not going to be having a lot of them to do because we still got to get into our picks for this week. But I do want to highlight a couple of games that really have my interest. The first one is Alabama and Texas A&M. Alabama's going on the road to take on Texas A&M. They are a 2.5-point favorite going into this game, and it kind of feels like Alabama doesn't look like the better team on paper in this game. And it seems really odd saying that because the majority of games that Alabama goes into, they have a significant advantage when it comes to the talent gap. But in this game, though, Texas A&M is just as good as Alabama. I don't know if you guys look into 247 Sports Team Talent Composite rankings, but Texas A&M has one of the best rosters in America. They have a top 5, top 10 roster according to 247 Sports Team Talent Composite rankings, which takes every single 5, 4-star, 3-star on every team's roster, and they get ordered from teams that have the most 5 and 4 stars on their roster to the teams that have the least amount. So Texas A&M most definitely has the talent to beat Alabama in this game. And I think that this game kind of favors Texas A&M. Let me ask you something. In the SEC, who kind of looks like the most complete team in terms of who has a dependable offense and who has a dependable defense? I got to say Texas A&M. Yeah, their defense got carved up by Miami, but Miami possibly could win the ACC this year. You never know. But they did shut down Arkansas. Arkansas led by quarterback KJ Jefferson. If you are a fan of the SEC, you know that KJ Jefferson is one of the best quarterbacks in this conference, and he went 9-17, 132 passing yards, 1 touchdown and a pick against this A&M defense. They also do a really good job at getting pressure on the quarterback. Something that Alabama's offensive line struggles to do is to protect the quarterback. And then when you look at Texas A&M's run defense, right? They're 20th in America in rushing yards per game allowed, allowing less than 100 yards per game. Alabama, what is this identity that Nick Saban wants to implement with this offense this year? He wants them to be a physical, smash-mouth football team. Well, what's going to happen if they're not able to establish the run and they get put into a situation like they did when they lost to Texas, where they actually have to be able to be efficient throwing the football? Jalen Milroe, he's not a completely terrible thrower of the ball. He does have the ability to hit the deep ball every once in a while. He can't hit it consistently, but if you allow him to take shots deep, he's going to make you pay 6 times out of 10. Texas A&M secondary, I do have a little concern about them, but at the end of the day, though, I still don't really know if Jalen Milroe is good enough to be able to take apart this Texas A&M secondary like how Tyler Van Dyke did. Tyler Van Dyke is a better quarterback than Jalen Milroe. So therefore, I can't say that, Texas A&M secondary isn't that great because they got exposed by Miami, when I doubt that Jalen Milroe is going to be able to have the same amount of success through the air that Tyler Van Dyke was able to have against this defense. And they got a really good pass rush. Miami's offensive line up to this point of the season has played better than Alabama's. Alabama's offensive line hasn't played well in 3 to the last 4 years? And going against one of the best defensive lines in all of college football, when you look at the Aggies defensive line, they got NFL guys all over the place. My favorite defensive lineman on this team is Shamar Turner. You know, there are a lot of talented athletes on this defensive line. This defensive line has a lot of similarities to Georgia's. And I know that's going to sound like a hot take, but Georgia's defensive line didn't have just a bunch of big 300-plus guys. They had a bunch of 300-plus guys who were hyper-athletic and could move, and that's what Texas A&M has on their defensive line going into this game. And if Alabama doesn't have success running the football, they're going to lose this game. I don't see a single path to victory for Alabama winning this game if the run game isn't going in this game. And plus, they have to win this game on the road. When you look at all of Alabama's losses that they suffered last season, where did they occur at? On the road. Alabama hasn't really been the same team that they used to be on the road in the past years that they have looked like on the road in the last 2 years. On the road, they haven't really played their best football against some of the top teams in the nation. Now, their defense is going to keep them in this game, all right? Regardless of how improved this offense is under Bobby Petrino, this defense is going to do a good job at keeping this offense from being able to crack 30. All right, Texas A&M has a really talented offense. They got a lot of good receivers. They got a veteran offensive line. Max Johnson is in that quarterback replacing Connor Wickman, who is out for the season. But Max Johnson isn't no slouch. He's not your typical backup quarterback that comes in and you're just hoping that he can keep you in the game. Like, Max Johnson is actually really good, and he had a pretty good performance against Arkansas. And Texas A&M doesn't need for Max Johnson to light the world on fire. All they need for him to do is to throw 2 touchdowns and don't turn the football over. I remember Texas A&M beating Alabama a couple of years ago with Zach Calzada at quarterback, if I'm not mistaken. And Zach Calzada, I don't even know if he's still playing football anymore. So as long as Texas A&M can get Max Johnson taking care of the football and he can make a couple of big throws here and there, he should be pretty okay in this game. They got a pretty good team around him, so they don't really need him to have some kind of Heisman-level performance. Alabama, they need Jalen Milroe to play better in this game than what Texas A&M needs Max Johnson to do. Jalen Milroe has way more pressure to have a good game than what Max Johnson does, because Alabama, they got to be able to be somewhat balanced on offense, and I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. If Alabama gets down early, 17-0, or they get down 20-0 or 27 at halftime, and they get put in a situation where they got to throw the ball to stay in the game, this game favors Texas A&M. And the more points that get scored in this game, I think it favors Texas A&M also. I think the path to Alabama winning this game is them being able to dominate on the defense side of the football, being able to run the football and keeping this game low scoring, and being able to take a lot of time off the clock and tiring out that Texas A&M front seven. But you see, that's easier said than done, because I do think that Texas A&M, with the offensive personnel that they have, they can do some damage to that Alabama defense. This Alabama defense hasn't been, impenetrable. They've had some moments this season when this secondary didn't look all this great. This secondary was getting torched by Texas. Texas A&M has a really good group of wide receivers. Now, they don't got the level of talent at wide receiver that Texas does, because Texas damn near has like 4 wide receiver ones on their team. But Texas A&M isn't too far off. And they do have the ability to protect their quarterback, something that Alabama doesn't. So when I look at this game, right, I really think that the path for Alabama winning is that they need to be able to run the football. Okay, as long as they can somewhat be able to effectively run the football, they have a chance at winning this game. But if this gets into a game where Jalen Milroe has to air it out 30-plus times, they're in trouble. He's not that kind of quarterback. He reminds me a lot of Blake Sims. And many of you guys who probably don't really follow college football like that, you just casually follow it, you don't know who the hell Blake Sims is. But Alabama fans definitely know who Blake Sims is. Jalen Milroe reminds me of a way more athletic version than Blake Sims. And when Blake Sims was playing for Bama, he wasn't lighting college football on fire with his arm. He could make a couple of big throws downfield, but that was about it. He was dominating with his legs. So Alabama, just because they are a team that kind of is a little bit handcuffed due to the situation that they have at quarterback, Jalen Milroe is still a really hard quarterback to stop because of how dynamic of an athlete he is. And when he decides to tuck the ball and run, he's probably one of the toughest dual threat quarterbacks in all of college football to stop. And if you can't slow down that athleticism, then your ability to slow down the run greatly diminishes. Because not only do you got to stop the run game with these running backs in Jalen Milroe, but you also have to do a good job of keeping him from breaking contain, getting outside the pocket, and making big plays in the run game with his legs when nobody's open in the passing game. And that's a lot easier said than done, because anytime you have a guy at quarterback with the kind of athleticism that Jalen Milroe has, anytime you think you have them bottled up, they always find a way to break out and make something happen. They always do a good job of turning nothing into something. So even though Jalen Milroe isn't the greatest passer of the world, if Texas A&M's secondary is the same secondary that we saw against Miami, and Jalen Milroe actually can dice that secondary up, then I think Texas A&M, they probably going to lose this game. I think the reason why I'm picking Texas A&M to win, for the most part, is due to the fact that they just have way too many advantages in their favor going into this game. You got a quarterback who is more dependable throwing the football than Jalen Milroe and Max Johnson. You got a better team on the line of scrimmage than what Alabama does on both sides of the football. I think you got a better offensive line and defensive line than Alabama. Plus, you have the ability to get pressure on the quarterback, and Alabama has a terrible offensive line. And really, the only way Alabama can have success on offense is by running the football. Passing is not their strong suit. So they can't really play a complementary style of football that you have to play in the SEC in order to be one of the top teams in this conference. Alabama is really just winging it because of how good their defense is. But when this offense gets asked to have to carry their load, they're not able to do it. That's why I like Texas A&M to win. And I'll be really surprised if Texas A&M doesn't come away with the win in this game. I was a little conflicted picking who I thought was going to win this game. But now that I just got done talking about it for the last 8 to 9 minutes, I'm pretty confident. I got a 4 out of 5 confidence level that Texas A&M wins this game. They're playing at home. They're better up front than Alabama. And plus, Alabama is just a one-dimensional football team on offense. If they can't run the football, their offense is going to struggle in this game. I just think Texas A&M has way more ways to win this game than what Alabama does. If Alabama wins this game, you know what the formula is. Running the football, not asking Jalen Milroe to do too much, and playing great defense. Texas A&M can beat Alabama in so many different ways. They could just outscore them and make this game so out of reach to the point that Alabama has to come back. Because Alabama's offense, they're not going to be running like a well-oiled machine. They're going to have a couple of offensive possessions where they go 3 and out, that defense gets put back on the field faster than what they want it to be, and they get tired early, and they get gassed, and Texas A&M takes advantage of it. So I like the Aggies to pull off the win against Alabama. I don't really think this would be an upset, so I'm not going to consider it to be an upset, because I really think that Texas A&M has a very great chance at pulling off this win against Alabama. I damn near am tempted to say that they're a better team than what Alabama is right now. And if they win this game, I'm going to lock them in as my pick to win the SEC West. I already wanted to pick Texas A&M to win the SEC West this year. It's just that some of y'all kind of made me feel like I was a little bit of an idiot for having so much faith in Bobby Petrino. But, you know, if they win this game, I think that Texas A&M is the runaway favorite to win the SEC West. We got Kentucky going on the road to take on Georgia. And when these two teams play, it's mostly pretty close. At least when you watch this game. Now, if you go and you look at the last couple of matchups between these two teams and you just check the box score, you'll say, man, JT, these games weren't close. Georgia blew these fools out. No, you actually have to watch the games. Most of the times when Kentucky plays Georgia, it's pretty close in the first half, and then Georgia slowly and gradually pulls away in the second half because Kentucky doesn't really have that great of an offense. And this is the same Kentucky team that we've seen plenty of times that has had really good seasons under Mark Stoops. Mark Stoops doesn't want anything special on offense. He just wants a great offensive line, a good rushing attack, and defensively, he wants to be really good up front. And if you're talking about, you know, the second most physical team in the SEC behind Georgia, you got to go Kentucky. One thing that Kentucky is always good at is being very good up front. Last year, their offensive line was really bad, which is uncharacteristic because they normally have one of the best offensive lines in the SEC. They call it the Big Blue Wall for a reason, and the Big Blue Wall is back, baby. You saw what my guy Ray Ravis did to Florida last week. He had 3 touchdowns on the ground. He had 280 rushing yards, and he was averaging 10 yards per pop. And you may be saying to yourself, JT, man, like, Georgia has a really good run defense. Well, we thought Georgia had a really good defense or a really good run defense. We ain't see it last week against Auburn. Auburn was running whatever they wanted to run against Georgia. They were getting quarterback runs with Payton Thorne, and I didn't even know Payton Thorne had that kind of mobility in his game. Robbie Ashford was breaking off pretty big chunks of runs. Their running backs were going off. So Georgia's run defense, or their defensive line, isn't that strong as what it has been the last 2 years. And there was going to come a moment where Georgia's defensive line was going to drop off because their last 2 defensive lines are arguably some of the greatest in college football history. A lot of players that started on Georgia's defensive line over the last 2 years are now starters in the NFL, and for very good reason. You look at Kentucky's offensive line, this is a really nasty offensive line. And they got no problem getting down and dirty and matching up with the physicality that Georgia has on the defensive line. And that's a good reason why I think Kentucky normally is able to keep these games pretty close in the first half. And when you look at this iteration of Georgia in 2023, they haven't been the dominant team that they have been in their back-to-back championship years. Georgia, anytime you played them, you were a little bit terrified because you know that this team, they're killers, they're dogs, and they smell blood in the water. But this season, though, you see them going to Auburn, right? And you kind of expect them to blow Auburn out because that's what the previous iterations of Georgia were able to do. The previous Georgia teams were really dominant, and when they had a mismatch And anytime they were playing against a team that was in their conference that they were expected to blow out, more times than not, they blew them out. But this season, though, this Georgia team doesn't look as dominant as their last two Georgia teams of the previous years. And I think that Kentucky has a better chance at winning this game than what they've had in recent memory going up against Georgia going on the road. Now, for Kentucky to win this game, even if Ray Ravis goes off, they need Devin Leary to wake up. If Devin Leary can play this game like how he was playing at NC State prior to that injury that he suffered last year, Kentucky can absolutely win this freaking game. But the problem is that Devin Leary has been such a massive disappointment. And it's not like he has a bad team around him. He has some, Devin Leary has some really talented receivers around him. Barrion Brown, Dane Key, both of those guys were 4-star wide receivers coming out. They were true freshmen last year and got significant playing time. They're sophomores this year, and Devin Leary has held those young men back. The offensive line is really good. You know, there is too much talent on this Kentucky offense for Devin Leary to continue to stink it up. He's been worse than Will Levis. Will Levis wasn't bad, but he wasn't great. And if Devin Leary can have a big-time performance in this game, the pendulum for Kentucky being able to pull off this upset gradually swings in their favor. Georgia's defense is still elite, but it's not the same elite as it has been in the last 2 years. You see, in 2021 and 2022, Georgia had arguably 2 years where they had the best run on defense in the history of college football. Those were all-time great defenses. You can't expect to have an all-time great defense every year. Kentucky, their coaching staff was really high on their defensive line coming into this season. They believe that this is the most talent that they've had on the defensive line ever under Mark Stoops. And we're definitely going to see if that theory holds up correctly because Georgia's offensive line is amongst the best in the country. You know, like, we talk about if Kentucky's going to be able to have the same amount of success in the run department that Auburn had last week, but is Kentucky's run defense going to be able to hold up against Georgia? Can they make Georgia a one-dimensional team like how they did Florida last week? You see, we still don't really know who Carson Beck is per se. All right, we know that he's a good quarterback, but is he a great quarterback? Is he a quarterback that can carry Georgia to a win? We don't really know that. Georgia does have a really solid team, but is Carson Beck really as good as a quarterback as Georgia fans think that he is or hope that he can be? We're going to see that in this game. This is a really good defense. They got a really good front seven. I don't know about the secondary. You know, the secondary still has a lot to prove to me for Kentucky. But with how good this defensive line is and how good they are at being able to slow down the run game, like they're top 5 in America in rushing yards per game allowed. And for Georgia, you know, like your run defense, you got shredded by Auburn. And Kentucky is one of those teams that if you allow them to play their style of football, you know, they're going to have a good chance at winning this game. And for the first time in a very long time, this could be the first Kentucky-Georgia matchup that could literally come down to the fourth quarter. You know, Kentucky is a physical team. They don't really do anything special. They're not going to be a fun-to-watch offense. You know, they're going to run the football down your throat. They're going to prove that you can't stop it, or either you're going to prove to them that, yes, we can stop it, and you're going to have to force Devin Leary to beat you throwing the football, which if you're Georgia, you like your chances of doing that. And I think that could be the biggest nightmare scenario for Kentucky in this game. You can't run the football at all, and you got to ask Devin Leary to win the game for you. And before this season, if you would have told me that Devin Leary was going to forget how to be a good quarterback, I would have thought you were crazy. But I don't know how he can go from being one of the best quarterbacks in college football to being one of the worst in the SEC. With a way more better situation than what he ever had to work with at NC State. And that's why I got to take Georgia. You see, even if Georgia isn't as dominant as a team this year as they have been the previous 2 seasons, you still need somewhat decent quarterback play to beat this team this year. Not even that, F that. You still need great quarterback play to beat Georgia. I've yet to see a team beat Georgia that had barely above average quarterback play. When you beat Georgia, you need your quarterback to play his A game. You need him to have one of the best games of his whole entire career. And unless Devin Leary can come out and remember how to play quarterback the same way he did when he was playing for NC State, I don't see Kentucky winning this game. And I really wanted to pick Kentucky. I really felt like this could be a season where Kentucky kind of shocks everybody and takes the college football world by storm. But it just seems like they can never just get a great quarterback. They can never just get great quarterback play. It just seems like Kentucky's one of those programs that's just capped with the level of production that they can get out of the quarterback. They're never going to get no better than above average, okay, good at best quarterback play. If Kentucky could get an elite quarterback in there and he could play at an elite level, this is a team that this season I strongly believe could win the SEC East with how Georgia has played. But Georgia, they're licking their chops because they're looking at Devin Leary and they're like, man, like, we're not even worried about Ray Davis. Like, let's just stack the box and force Devin Leary to beat us. And Kentucky fans are going to say he's still trying to get back into the rhythm. He missed a good amount of last year due to that injury, and that's understandable, but we're nearing the midway point of this year. How much time do you need to bounce back? You're going up against the best team that you're going to face all season, the number 1 team in America right now. If that doesn't motivate you to play your best football, nothing will. Give me the Bulldogs to win. 31-14 is my final score prediction for this game. Notre Dame heads on the road for the 2nd straight week. This time, they're taking on Louisville. Now, last week, we saw the Fighting Irish beat Duke 21-14 in a very highly competitive and very entertaining game. And Notre Dame walked out of that game with the win. Now, you're going in to really hostile territory going on the road against Louisville. And I think that this game has a really strong chance of resulting in an upset in Louisville's favor. And let me tell you why. When you played against Duke, right, you had the talent advantage in that game. We all knew that. And you still have the talent advantage going into this game. But the reason why that game was close was because Duke is a well-coached football team. And when you're a well-coached football team, you don't commit a lot of penalties, you don't beat yourselves, and you play fundamentally sound football, you don't make a lot of mistakes on defense, not too many missed tackles and blown coverages, 9 times out of 10, you can hang around with a team like Notre Dame because Notre Dame, when they beat you, they're not going to blow you out unless you just are at a complete disadvantage from a talent standpoint. That's not Notre Dame's style of play. They're not a team that's going to air you out. They want to get the snap off quick on offense and run a lot of plays. They kind of like to run a ball control offense. And when you're going up against Louisville, this is a team that has a very capable defense. Now, they don't have one of the best defenses in college football, but they are pretty good against the run, and they are really good inside of the red zone. Now, the downfall with Louisville's defense is that their pass rushing secondary is okay? Now, offensively, you don't really know what you're going to expect out of Louisville in this game. Because against Boston College, they put 50 on those boys' tops. And their quarterback, Jack Plummer, he had 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. It looked like he was throwing passes against the air. But then last week in their win against NC State, this offense just looked out of sorts. So you don't really know what kind of offense you're going to get out of Louisville in this game. Now, their defense should be able to keep this game close. But if this offense struggles the way that they did against NC State, eventually Notre Dame is going to end up plugging away at them, and this game could get out of hand if Jack Plummer and this offense and company don't have a better performance. Now, the main reason why I think Notre Dame can be in trouble in this game is because they're going up against a really good head coach in Jeff Brohm. Now, if you don't really know who Jeff Brohm is, let me just give you a quick summary about why he's nicknamed the upset master. Yes, Jeff Brohm's nickname is the upset master. And you don't get a nickname like that for no reason. He's 3-1 against top 5 teams. He's 7-11 against teams ranked inside the AP top 25. And I don't know how many of you guys remember that year when Ohio State got blown out on the road by Purdue and Dwayne Haskins, God rest his soul, was the quarterback that year and they missed the college football playoffs because of that loss. Jeff Brohm was the head coach in that game for Purdue. So you talk about Marcus Freeman needing to be ready and this coaching staff needing to be ready. This is definitely a game where they really need to coach some of their best football, because Jeff Brohm and Louisville, they're not 5-0 by mistake. Yeah, they don't really have an insanely talented roster, but they got a good enough roster, coupled with the fact that Jeff Brohm is such a great coach, is that if Notre Dame plays with their food in this game, Louisville most definitely could pull off the upset. You know, Notre Dame, they need to come into this game and really show why they're they need to come into this game and show why they're a more talented team than Louisville. All right, I think that Notre Dame is a top 10 team this year. Louisville is a top 25 team in my opinion. All right, but I think that Notre Dame does have a better overall team than Louisville, and they need to come out in this game and show it. Need to make sure that this game is kind of over by halftime. Because if you go on the road and you allow this game to be close like how it was against Duke, there's a very strong chance that you lose this game. You see, Riley Leonard, he's not really a great thrower of the football. He's a really good runner, but I don't really think he's all that great throwing the football. I think that Jack Plummer is a better thrower than what the previous quarterback that you faced for Duke was, Riley Leonard. Now, the thing with Jack Plummer is that sometimes he can be hot and cold. So with Louisville, you don't really know what you're going to get out of him. Is he going to be the quarterback that we saw put 5 touchdowns up against Boston College, or is he going to be the quarterback that struggled last week against NC State? We really don't know. One thing we do know is that the one consistent about Notre Dame on defense is that they got a really good defensive line and their secondary is pretty good also. So you know that this defense is going to show up to play. But what about this offense though? You know, I still feel like Notre Dame's offense has yet to play their best football. I think that this offense is more than capable of being able to perform at a way more efficient level than what they have. This is the most talent that they've had at receiver and ever. You got a really good offensive line. You got Sam Hartman, who has made some really big plays and big moments of games. You know, he came through last week against Duke in the clutch. He almost came through against Ohio State in the clutch. So if this is a close game, if you're a fan of the Fighting Irish, you say, JT, I believe we win because we just are a team that knows how to win these close games, and we got Sam Hartman. If we need Sam Hartman to put us in position late to win us this game, we believe that he can do that, and I believe that also. But I also believe in the upset master, Jeff Brohm. And I really think that the head coaching matchup is really going to be the deciding factor in this game, because I love Marcus Freeman as a head coach. But I do think that there is a chance that maybe Jeff Brohm gets the better of him. Jeff Brohm, he was the former head coach at Purdue. And even though the Big Ten is only ran by 3 teams, Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan, those are the only 3 teams we pay attention to in that conference, Jeff Brohm was able to make it to the Big Ten championship, and he also was able to pull off multiple upsets against teams that nobody thought they would be able to beat. You want to know why? Because he always has his team ready to play in big games, especially when they're underdogs. So if I was somebody who was betting on this game, I kind of would take Louisville with the under. Now, who I'm taking outright? I'm still taking Notre Dame. Notre Dame, I really think that this is one of the best teams that they've had in a very long time. You got a really great defense. Your offense is pretty good. And this could be another one-possession game that comes down to the wire in the fourth quarter. But Notre Dame has showed the ability to be able to close out games. Even though they weren't able to close out Ohio State, they were able to close out Duke. Louisville, you know, even though they do have the upset master, and he does worry me in this game, I don't think that their offense is going to be able to get it done when it matters the most. Jack Plummer and company, they haven't really shown a lot of consistency. Now, if they would have had a better performance against NC State, I might change my tune about this game. But I trust Notre Dame's defense, and I think that offensively, they're just way more efficient than what Louisville is. So my final score prediction in this game is Notre Dame 27, Louisville 23 is my final score prediction. Before we get into my weekly college football and NFL picks, if you made it this far throughout the episode, make sure that you go ahead, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. We go live Sunday through Thursday around 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. If you're enjoying this episode, please give us a 5-star review. Take your cell phone, smartphone, whatever you use to listen to podcasts, type in the JT Sports Podcast on Apple and Spotify, and give us a 5-star review if you're enjoying this episode. And also, share the podcast, man, because you know what they say, sharing is caring. And when you have something that you like, why not share the joy with the world? Spread the wealth is what they call it. College football, week 6 prediction time. We got Georgia Tech taking on the Miami Hurricanes. Y'all boys know I'm rolling with my Hurricanes. People don't know if I'm a Colorado fan or a Miami Hurricane fan. I'm a fan of both. I'm a fan of Deion Sanders, so I'm going to root for anywhere Deion Sanders goes. And I'm also going to ride or die for my Miami Hurricanes. And we're really good this year. And it really surprises me. Because, I came into this season with fairly low expectations for Miami. Because anytime I get high expectations for this squad, they always let me down. And I refuse to let another year go by where I put my trust and faith into the Hurricanes being able to make something shake and they let me down. But this season, though, they may surprise me. When I least expect this team to do anything, it's the year where they actually do something big. Crazy. Red River Shootout, Showdown, wherever you want to call it. Oklahoma versus Texas. I'm taking Texas, man. I think this game is pretty easy to decide. I'm not really picking Texas because Oklahoma hasn't played anybody. Because here's the problem with that argument. When you say Oklahoma hasn't played anybody, you make it seem like Texas is just going to run away with this game. This is a rivalry game. And rivalry games, regardless of who has the talent advantage, normally tend to be pretty close. And if Oklahoma is the team that we expect them to be, the second best in the Big 12 because they are the second team that's favored to win this conference behind Texas, then they shouldn't get blown out in this game. And plus, you got Dylan Gabriel healthy. You didn't have him healthy for this game last year. You had Eric Gray out there running Wildcat quarterback. And as soon as I saw that shit as soon as I saw Oklahoma come out last year running that Wildcat offense, I knew they was about to get whacked. Dylan Gabriel, I think he's pretty solid. This play calling on the offensive side of the ball by Jeff Lebby, it can be a little bit questionable at times. But I think what's really going to be able to keep Oklahoma in this game is going to be their defense. But the reason why I'm taking Texas is because, Texas just has one of the best teams in college football this year. I really think this is Texas' year, but I expect this game to be close. And you guys are going to see tomorrow when I do my score predictions and my picks against the spread how I truly feel this game is going to go. We got Maryland taking on Ohio State. I'm taking Ohio State to get the win. Maryland has to play them on the road this year. Yeah, they were pretty competitive when they played Ohio State last year. They did have some moments in that game, like that blocked field goal where they looked like maybe they could have pulled off the upset. But the problem with Mike Locksley and Maryland is that, against these teams like Ohio State or Michigan, when they end up being close, Maryland just doesn't know how to win close games against top teams. They don't know how to finish teams off. That seems to be the problem with Mike Locksley. And, if he's going to get a win this year against a big-time team, I don't think it's going to come against Ohio State. I just think that Maryland, their defense has been such a big question for the last couple of years. They haven't really had a top-level defense, and you got to be able to get this offense off the field. And I don't know if Maryland is all that great up front. And if you don't have neither one of those two things, I don't really think you have a great chance at winning. Now, you do have Talia Tagovailoa, Tua's little brother, at quarterback. I like him a lot, but you got to do more than just be able to score points on offense. Ohio State's defense is not the same defense that you went up against last year. You know, Jim Knowles, this defense actually is as good as what we expected it to be coming into this season. And if Maryland can't really get anything going offensively, I'm going to have a hard time seeing them getting too many stops on defense. So I'm easily going to take the Ohio State Buckeyes to win this game. I don't really think there's a big chance of an upset happening here. I understand why people are hyped about Maryland, because they're a team that, with the win against Ohio State, that could be their breakthrough win that propels them into that next level. Because the Big Ten could easily be a 4-team conference and not just the 3-team conference that it has been for the last couple of years. If Maryland can finally break through and they could win this game against Ohio State, you could finally put them in that top echelon of teams in the Big Ten. But for right now, I just think that they're always going to be in the tier 2 of teams until they can get better up front. We got LSU taking on Missouri. This is a game that I wanted to preview tonight, but I didn't have time to get to it. I like LSU to bounce back with the win, even though they are playing on the road at Missouri. Missouri already has a big win against Kansas State that they got a couple of weeks ago. This is one of the better teams that Missouri has put on the field in a very long time. And I may say this is the best Mizzou team that I've seen since 2014. But LSU, I think they got a lot to prove this week. They have a lot of added motivation due to the disappointing loss that they suffered to Ole Miss last weekend. They got a lot banking on this game. You know, they lose this game, they possibly could be out of the mix to win the SEC or make it to the SEC championship game this year. So they really need to win this game if they want to try to keep their chances of making it to the conference championship game alive. Now, Missouri, on the other hand, you know, you're trying to stay undefeated. LSU already has 2 losses, and you're trying to say, you know, why can't we make it back to the SEC championship? A place that this program hasn't been since they kind of first joined the SEC, which is crazy to say. So I'm going to take LSU to get the win. I don't think Missouri's defense is good enough to get a lot of stops on LSU's offense. Now, Missouri's going to put points up on LSU's defense because this is the worst secondary that LSU has had ever, at least in my whole entire lifetime, and they call themselves DBU. Well, I don't see any DBU-worthy defensive back starting for LSU in that secondary right now, okay? But Missouri, I do think they're going to be able to compete in this game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I like LSU. 42-35 is my final score prediction. Now, we got Washington State going on the road to take on UCLA. I like Washington State. Washington State, Cameron Ward has been playing some incredible football. I don't know if I can still call him underrated anymore because people are now starting to catch on to how good he is. And when I look at Dante Moore, I mean, bro looked awful against Utah. And I do know that Utah has a very good defense, but in that game, UCLA just looked like they were completely lacking talent on the offensive line, at wide receiver. I don't really think that this is a great UCLA team on offense. Defensively, I think that they are really good. But against Washington State, I don't really know if I have a lot of confidence that Dante Moore is going to be able to play well enough to keep up with Washington State and Cam Ward in this offense. That's why I got to go with Washington State with the win. Florida State, they should take care of Virginia Tech. Although Virginia Tech kind of has started to look a little bit better over the last couple of weeks. You got Kyron Drones in that quarterback now. He didn't win the quarterback competition initially, but he has a lot of potential. Really great athleticism, insane size. Look out for him in this game. If FSU struggles, it's mainly going to be because Kyron Drones ends up having a big game. But I'm still taking FSU to get the win. I do think that they're going to blow out Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech, they still got a ways to go. This program is in rebuild mode, but if they could keep it close for the first 3 quarters and then maybe FSU pulls away in the 4th quarter, I think that'll be a good moral victory for Virginia Tech. even though they are trying to win this game. But you're on the road playing in Doak Campbell Stadium, FSU. I know they haven't played some of their best football, or at least they haven't played at the level that they did against LSU, but I just don't think that Virginia Tech just has the talent to hang around with FSU this year. I'm taking Texas A&M over Alabama. We kind of already previewed this game. If you guys haven't seen it, go ahead and check it out. Texas A&M, I just think that they have way more reasons for why they should win this game than what Alabama has to win it. Texas A&M, they got a really good defensive line. They have a fantastic pass rush. Alabama has a terrible offensive line, or at least an offensive line that's struggling at the moment. And plus, they don't have consistent quarterback play. Jalen Milroe, he's a really good athlete, but he isn't the best passer. He can hit you with a couple of deep balls every once in a while, but he doesn't hit it all that consistently. And for Alabama, I think they can only win this game one way. Great defense, being able to be a physical team and run the football with a lot of effectiveness. Texas A&M, it's like they can beat you anyway. They got a great defense also. If this is a low-scoring game, they can win it. If it ends up being a high-scoring game some way, somehow, Alabama's offense can find a way to break 30 in this game, Texas A&M can keep up with them. But for the most part, I expect this to be a low-scoring affair. Alabama has a really great defense. Texas A&M, their offensive line is pretty good. Their offense has been clicking this year, but Alabama's defense has been all world this year. And that's what has allowed Alabama to hang around in a lot of games that they've been in, and why they avoided the upset against USF. If they didn't have as great as a defense as they have had this year up to this point, they probably have 2 losses up to this game or going into this game. But this defense has been really good. They shut down Ole Miss. So the fact that they shut down Ole Miss shows you that this is a legit defense. Ole Miss put 55 on LSU's defense with no problems. And Ole Miss has one of the best offenses in college football, and Alabama held them to only 3 points. But they're playing on the road in Aggie land, College Station. You know, the last time Texas A&M beat Alabama, it was at home. I believe they did it with a quarterback named, what was his name? Zach Calzada, I think. I think he was the backup quarterback at that time. But I just think that Texas A&M, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to beat Alabama this year. I think they just are a better team than Alabama this year. And I think that Jimbo gets his big signature win for Texas A&M this year that really gets people back on the Texas A&M bandwagon, because people seem to forget that most people prior to this offseason normally have Texas A&M being one of those dark horse college football playoff picks. And if there was ever a year to be excited about Texas A&M's chances of being able to win the SEC and make it to the playoffs, it would be this year. They got a talented roster. They had a talented roster last year. The only thing that held them back was the coaching. I think Texas A&M takes care of business at home against Bama. I'm taking UNC against Syracuse. Like, I got this rule that anytime Syracuse plays against a good Power 5 opponent, or at least a halfway decent Power 5 opponent, I'm taking them to lose. Dino Beavers, or I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I do know that his first name is Dino. I don't think he's that great of a coach. Now, they are, 4-1 right now, but we saw them lose to Clemson last week. And Drake May in North Carolina, I'm not really high on this team. You know, I think that North Carolina right now is the most overrated team in college football. We talk about how Colorado wins games with Shedeur Sanders and not really having a lot of players around him to pick up the slack outside of a couple of good receivers. That's kind of the same situation that Drake May is in with North Carolina. The only difference between him and Shedeur is that Shadeur's offensive line sucks and Drake May's offensive line is pretty solid. Now, UNC's defense kind of has stepped it up this year. Surprisingly, I thought this school would never learn how to play defense. But Syracuse, you know, I expect them to get blown out in this game. Dino Barbers, however you pronounce it, I don't think he's a good coach. And Syracuse, just anytime I see them going against a Power 5 team, they just don't really play great football. And they already lost to Clemson. And I don't know why people make it seem like every time Syracuse and Clemson play, oh, you got to look out for Syracuse. You know, Syracuse always plays Clemson tough. Like, I like UNC to win, even though they're overrated. Now, we got Kentucky taking on Georgia. I'm taking Georgia to win. All right. If Devin Leary learned how to play quarterback at a high level again, the same way he did when he was playing for NC State before he transferred to Kentucky, Kentucky possibly could win this game. And they got a very good chance to do so. If Devin Leary just wakes up and remembers that, hey, like, I used to be one of the best quarterbacks in college football at one point, and he reawakens, Georgia could be in a lot of trouble in this game, even though they are playing at home. Because Georgia, they struggled against Auburn last week. Auburn went for 200 plus on them on the ground. And we saw what Ray Ravis did. So even if Kentucky has success on the ground, they still need Devin Leary to play better than what he has had played up to this point. And he's been a really big disappointment. I'm taking the Bulldogs. I got Michigan over Minnesota. Man, like, Minnesota has burned me so many damn times this season, man. Like, I thought they were going to be able to pull off the upset against North Carolina, and these clowns couldn't even freaking cover. They don't got no offensive line. They got an awful quarterback. Their defense is okay, but Minnesota is probably going to get the boat rolled on them. Michigan should go into Minnesota and sink the boat. Because, Minnesota, that quarterback they got back there is garbage. Absolute garbage. I got Notre Dame over Louisville. This game was really close in terms of who I wanted to pick because Louisville has Jeff Brohm, and I don't think a lot of college football fans are really familiar with the upset master. There's a reason why they call Jeff Brohm the upset master. And if you don't remember who he is, do you remember that year when Purdue beat Ohio State led by Dwayne Haskins at home? And that pretty much was the loss that kept Ohio State from making it into the playoffs that year. Jeff Brohm was the head coach of Purdue that season. Not just is he 3-1 against top 5 teams, but he's 7-11 against AP top 25 ranked opponents. So this dude definitely has earned the name or the nickname, the upset master. But I believe that Notre Dame is going to be able to pull this off just because I believe that Notre Dame is a really good team this year, and good teams find ways to win, especially on the road. Arkansas is heading on the road to take on Ole Miss. This is a really underrated game, right? Because Ole Miss is riding high. Lane Kiffin pretty much got the biggest win of his head coaching career down there at Ole Miss. And they're going up against an Arkansas team that right now, they're kind of reeling. They're on the ropes. And there's a possibility that Arkansas could fall to 2-4 with a loss in this game. Now, the play calling for Arkansas has been awful. You can't expect nothing special out of Dan Enos. This is coming from a Hurricanes fan, so I feel your pain, Arkansas fans. But they still got KJ Jefferson. Now, KJ Jefferson, he hasn't looked like the same quarterback that he has looked like in the past. He's turned the football over more. He doesn't really look all that great as a passer this year. He kind of is having a down year. And Ole Miss can hang a lot of points on you offensively, and Arkansas doesn't have a damn defense. Now, Ole Miss doesn't have a damn defense neither, but Ole Miss, I'll take them to win just because I trust the play calling more than I trust the play calling for Arkansas. Like, Arkansas with Dan Enos at the helm at offensive coordinator, they're liable to call some stupid shit when the game is on the line with him being the OC, and I just don't trust it. And as much as I love Arkansas fans, and I was tempted to pick Arkansas to win this game, not with that play calling and not with that defense. I'm sorry. You're not about to get me, man. I'm taking Ole Miss to win this game. Now, the last games that we got to talk about, we have Fresno State taking on Wyoming. This is interesting because Wyoming, they've been a pretty competitive team anytime they've gone up against Power 5 opponents, such as Texas Tech. They beat them early, and they were getting right with Texas for one half. Fresno State, they look like a juggernaut. They look like the best G5 program in college football right now, at least for this season. And they got a high-powered offense. I'm going to take them to win this game. Oregon State is taking on Cal. I like Oregon State, even though DJ Uiagalelei, I'm not really the biggest fan of his. Like, I just don't think he's all that great, but he should be good enough to get it done against Cal. Arizona on the road against USC. Arizona has a great offense. Like, their backup quarterback came in and replaced Jaden Delore, and he was shredding. Who was they playing last week? I can't remember who Arizona was playing last week, but he was doing some damage last week. I believe it was Washington, if I'm not mistaken. Washington played Arizona, and their backup quarterback, he was absolutely cooking against the Huskies defense last week. And if he can replicate that same performance this week against a USC defense that gave up 41 to Colorado, this could be a game that possibly could be a little bit of an upset. Jeff Fish definitely has his Arizona program on the up and up, and they could be a team that could be a bowl-eligible program. I'm still picking USC to get the win, though, because they got that man Caleb Williams at quarterback, and I'm never going to go up against Caleb Williams, at least when they're going up against a team like Arizona, because Arizona, defensively, I don't think they're going to get too many stops. Now, USC's defense, I don't think they're going to get a lot of stops in this game neither, but I definitely think that they possibly are going to get more stops than what Arizona's defense is going to be able to get. Because when you're going up against Caleb Williams, unless you just got a star-studded team, you're not going to be able to get this man off the field for no more than maybe 1 or 2 possessions if you're lucky, if he throws an interception or fumbles. So I like USC to win. I think this is going to be a really high-scoring game, 48-28 is my final score prediction for that one. And then I got my Colorado Buffaloes over Arizona State. Colorado may not win this game super convincingly, because even though it seems like they have a way better team than Arizona State, they're still not a more superiorly talented team than Arizona State. And Arizona State did put some points up on USC when they played. So I think Colorado wins this game 34-17. I think this game could be a little bit challenging for Coach Prime and the Buffs. But this is it for my college football week 6 picks and predictions. Let me know what you guys think about them down in the comment section down below. Now we're moving on to our NFL week 5 picks and predictions. Thursday night football, we got the 0-4 dumpster fire Chicago Bears taking on the Washington Commanders, and I'm taking the Commanders, man. They got a way better defense than what the Denver Broncos had last week. Yeah, Justin Fields looked good, and the Broncos, they still came back and won the game. But you got to remember that Chicago's offense was going up against one of the worst defenses in the NFL. You're going up against a Commanders defense that, although it has been mad disappointing to watch at times, their defensive line is absolutely going to obliterate Chicago's offensive line. It's going to be a massacre. Justin Fields is going to be running for his life all Thursday night in this game. I like the Commanders to win. Tennessee, Indianapolis, this is a tough one because Tennessee, they don't look really good right now offensively. Outside of Derrick Henry, they got nobody. DeAndre Hopkins, our worst fear has come true for him. He signed with Tennessee, and now he's become irrelevant in Tennessee because Ryan Tannehill stinks and he can't get him the football. So outside of Derrick Henry, Tennessee has no weapons on offense. But they do have a really good defense, though. And they're going up against Anthony Richardson. And why I'm so split on this game is because, anytime you got a rookie quarterback going up against a really good defensive-minded coach like Mike Vrabel, rookie quarterbacks tend to struggle, but Anthony Richardson and C.J. Stroud are kind of breaking the mold, and I think it's because of how good the coaching staffs are around them. And Shane Steichen, being the head coach for Anthony Richardson, has greatly benefited him, and it's a large reason why he's been such a pleasant surprise for most people up to this point. I'm going to take Tennessee, okay? I think Anthony Richardson can play well in this game, but I do think he probably makes a back-breaking mistake late that probably wins it for Tennessee. I mean, this defense is just a little bit too good for Anthony Richardson just to have a crazy performance against it. I'll be really surprised if Anthony Richardson lit up Tennessee's defense. I'm taking the Ravens against the Steelers, man, and I'm a Steelers fan doing this, but I just don't really got any faith in this offense. And Kenny Pickett possibly could play in this game, but Matt Canada's a terrible offensive coordinator. We got no secondary. The Ravens right now look like the team to beat in the AFC North. Lamar Jackson is playing at an MVP level. He does have the tendency to struggle against the Steelers. But I think this year, the offense is just so bad. I just think that Lamar and the Ravens get this one, at least the first go around. We got Jaguars playing the Buffalo Bills in London. The Jags just seem unbeatable anytime they play in London. The Buffalo Bills reminded us last week against the Miami Dolphins that they still are the team to beat in the AFC East, and they still are the biggest threat to the Chiefs. Could Trevor Lawrence have his coming out party against the Buffalo Bills? I've yet to really see a performance that Trevor Lawrence put up that made me go, oh yeah, like Trevor Lawrence has officially arrived. He officially is a top 5, top 3 quarterback in the league. So far, I've been really disappointed with how the Jags offense has performed so far this season. And the Buffalo Bills defense has been a top 3, top 5 defense at worst this year. I'm taking the Buffalo Bills to get the win. I could see the Jaguars pulling off the upset, but right now I just think the Jaguars are starting this season out a little bit slow out the gate. I think they're a team that's possibly going to get better the more we progress throughout this season. Now, when you look at the next slate of games that we have, right, this is going to be really interesting because you got the Houston Texans taking on the Atlanta Falcons. And the Houston Texans, with the win in this game, they could be 3-2 and possibly have the best record in the AFC South when this week is all said and done. And you're going against the Atlanta Falcons team that right now, they're in survival mode. Desmond Ridder, we don't know if he's going to remain the starting quarterback for any longer because he's played like garbage, all right? He threw interceptions on back-to-back drives when they played against the Jacksonville Jaguars last week. He doesn't like to throw the football downfield, and he's holding back Kyle Pitts, Drake London, and the rest of the talented skill position players that they have on that team. I'm going to take Houston to win. I think their defense is going to be really good in this game, and I think C.J. Stroud is going to continue to have the season that he's had up to this point, looking like a top 10 quarterback. And I got no problem calling C.J. Stroud a top 10 quarterback only a couple of games in. Like I said the same thing about Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. Sometimes you don't need half a season or a full season to know how good a guy is. Like you can know a guy's a dog when a guy has the kind of performances that C.J. Stroud has been putting up so far. Plus, his offensive line is a disaster. I mean, they're down multiple starters on that offensive line, and it doesn't even matter because C.J. Stroud is just so calm, cool, and collected in the pocket. And I think for the Atlanta Falcons, their defense, it has played pretty well, but their offense just hurts them. What's the point of having a great defense if they have to be on the field for hella plays because the offense can't really do a good job at sustaining drives? I'm taking the Lions over the Panthers easily. This isn't going to take too long to make a pick about. The Carolina Panthers possibly are going to be 0-6, and they possibly could be tanking for Marvin Harrison Jr. Well, they can't tank for nobody because they traded their first-round pick away. So it ain't even no point in them tanking. If anything, they making the job easier for the team they traded that pick to, Chicago. The Lions are going to win this game. I'm pretty confident that the Panthers fall to 0-5, but I'm hoping that my guy Bryce Young has a good game against the Lions defense. Giants, Dolphins. I don't think the Giants are as bad as a team as what many people think. And I know it's easy to write them off, but I don't think they're a bad team. I don't think they're a great team either. I think this is a mid team, and mid teams are capable of being able to pull off upsets. And the Dolphins, last week, they suffered a really demoralizing loss because many people thought that this was going to be the game that the Dolphins showed everybody why they now are the new kings of the AFC East, but they got humbled in the worst way possible. I'm still going to take the Dolphins to win. I was thinking about taking the Giants to win, but I don't think their defense is that great neither. I think that Tua is going to carve up that secondary. Like Deontay Banks, the rookie cornerback that they drafted in the first round out of Maryland, he's been pretty okay this year, but he gave up a touchdown to DK Metcalf last week that really upset me Because it's like he was playing good coverage. It didn't seem like he wasn't really paying attention. I guess he thought that the play was over. And then Geno Smith turns around and throws an interception to DK Metcalf, and Deontay Banks is just looking lost and surprised. Like, bruh, play through the whistle. New England is at home hosting the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints, man, this team is mad overrated. I told you guys this before the season, and I still remain with the same opinion up to this point going into week 5. Derek Carr has not been anything special. He's been the same Derek Carr that we've seen all these years with the Las Vegas Raiders. As a matter of fact, I need to write that down because I need to do a segment about that. He's mid. Okay, the only reason why Derek Carr isn't getting scrutinized by Saints fans is because this defense has been so good this year that as long as Derek Carr plays mid and he doesn't lose the game for the Saints, they're going to be able to win. The problem with that is that you're going up against a really good defense in the New England Patriots, and I know that they got body bagged last week by the Dallas Cowboys 38-3, but the Dallas Cowboys are just a really great team. The Patriots, I don't think that they're a bad team. I kind of think they're a mid team. I view them the same way I view the New York Giants. They're not good, but they're not bad. You can never count them out. And Mac Jones, I don't think he's been as bad as what people have been saying he's been this season. I thought that, he played pretty crappy against the Dallas Cowboys, but outside of that game, for the most part, I think he's been pretty solid this season. I'm going to roll with New England to get the win. Derek Carr, I don't think he's that great, and, I don't think his defense is going to be able to bail him out in this game. I think that the Patriots defense and Bill Belichick are really going to be able to expose Derek Carr, and I think that many Saints fans possibly could turn on Derek Carr with the loss in this game because then they will fall to 2-3 on the season. And they got beat really bad by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, oh my goodness, the Buccaneers put it on New Orleans in the worst way. So give me New England a win. Plus they're playing at home in Foxborough. We got the Philadelphia Eagles going on the road to take on the LA Rams. The Rams have been a really big surprise. I mean, this team has played pretty well. They've exceeded expectations. We thought this team was going to be one of the worst in the NFL. Now, they very well could be, but you're not always what your record says you are. The Rams are a way better team than what their record says. Their offensive line has played pretty good. Their receivers are playing really good. Puka Nacua, I got him in all my fantasy leagues. This is easily one of my favorite rookies in the league because anytime you produce for my fantasy team, I'm always going to root for you. However, I'm taking the Philadelphia Eagles to win. The Rams defense is severely lacking in a lot of areas. I don't think they got great corners. I don't really think they got a great defensive line outside of like a couple of players, not named Aaron Donald. I'm going to take Philadelphia. The Rams probably keep this thing close just because they're so well coached, but I think Philadelphia pulls away in the fourth quarter. Cincinnati versus Arizona. I don't know, man. It seems like it's easy to pick Cincinnati. But Joe Burrow, ever since this brother got paid, he has not looked it. He has not looked like he's it. He looks like one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. And when you look at that calf injury that he suffered, it obviously is impacting him. And I just wonder, with Arizona, the way that they've played in all their games so far this season, and the way Cincinnati has struggled offensively, I can kind of see Arizona winning this game. I really don't know. I really don't know who to pick, man. I'm so conflicted. Right now. It's like Arizona has played so great, and Cincinnati just looks like they can't do anything offensively, but it's like damn, it's like they still got the better team. It's just hard to pick against Cincinnati because it's Arizona, but at the same time, Arizona has played great football. I don't know, man. I want to take Cincinnati. I don't got the balls to take Arizona. I'm just going to keep it 100. But I wouldn't be surprised if they won this game, though. But I do think that Joe Burrow and company should be able to get the job done. And plus, they do got a pretty good defense. We got the Jets taking on the Broncos. Oh, I can't wait for this game because Sean Payton, he might have to answer for all that shit he was talking about Nathaniel Hackett. I hope y'all didn't forget about Sean Payton's comments that he made about Nathaniel Hackett prior to this season starting, because it's time for the New York Jets to make Sean Payton eat his words. All right, and I'm taking them to win this game. Now, I don't think they're going to win because Zach Wilson is going to continue to play the way that he did in this game, like he did in Sunday night. I think he kind of comes back to earth a little bit, but I don't think he's going to struggle. The Broncos defense sucks. Justin Fields put 28 on this defense. He looked like Tom Brady out there. At one point, Justin Fields was 16 for 16 against the Denver Broncos last week. And I promise to God, right hand on the Bible, left hand on the Bible, I'm not making this up. You watched the first half of Bears Broncos last week. That fool Justin Fields looked like the black version of Tom Brady mixed with a little bit of Michael Vick in his jeans. The Denver Broncos, though, they still came back and won the game because it's the Chicago Bears and they're a clown show down there, and that's just what clown shows do. They just find clown ways to lose games, and that's what the Chicago Bears did. But the New York Jets, they got too good of a defense for Russell Wilson to be going off against. And Russell Wilson has played pretty solid up to this point. All right, let's give Russell Wilson his credit and let's give him his roses for how he's performed. But this defense is just way too tough to see the Broncos having a lot of success. I mean, they had success against the Bears last week, but the Bears have arguably the worst defense in the NFL. I got the Chiefs over the Minnesota Vikings. The Chiefs have struggled this year at times, even though they are 3-1. They have some issues offensively. At wide receiver, they need somebody else to step up outside of MVS, and nobody really is consistently stepping up. Now, defensively, this defense has played the best that it ever has had in all the years that Steve Spagnuolo has been the defensive coordinator for Kansas City. And I think this could be the year where maybe he gets another head coaching opportunity. Even though he is up there in age, it's just like this defense is playing way too good not to give him an interview at least. And the Minnesota Vikings defense, I feel like it's come around. But, you know, Kirk Cousins, last week, he didn't really look that great against Carolina. Now, he did have a big touchdown throw to Justin Jefferson, which was a nicely thrown ball by him. But he's now kind of starting to, lose a little bit of the fire that he had to start this season. I like Kansas City to get the win in this game. Minnesota, I do think they are capable of being able to pull off the upset. But with how well Kansas City is playing defensively, I kind of doubt it. We got Dallas taking on the 49ers. I'm going to have to preview this game. This game is just way too big not to talk about. These are two of the best teams in the NFC. This could be a potential NFC Conference Championship matchup. Who should I take? Cowboys, 49ers. The last time these two teams played, it was a pretty close affair. But Dak Prescott sold because he threw the interception late. You look at the 49ers, Chris McCaffrey looks like an MVP candidate. This defense is playing well. The offense is playing well. Dallas, outside of their lone hiccup against Arizona, they look pretty good. I'm taking San Francisco again. All right. This game is a coin flip. You could pretty much flip a coin and make your prediction based on heads or tails. But I like the 49ers. I just think with the Dallas Cowboys, their lack of efficiency in the red zone is definitely going to hurt them in this game. When you're going up against a team like San Francisco, you can't go and struggle in the red zone. You got to be able to put touchdowns on the board when you get into the red area against the 49ers. I think that's ultimately going to cost them. And I got the Packers beating the Raiders. The Raiders are a pending dumpster fire. Jimmy Garoppolo, he missed last week with a concussion, I believe. He should be able to come back in this game. We don't know, but even if he does play, I don't think it's going to make a difference. I like Jordan Love way more than I like Jimmy Garoppolo. And this is it for my NFL Week 5 picks and predictions. Let me know your picks and predictions down in the comment section down below. And this is it for tonight's episode of the JT Sports Podcast. You know, we started this thing at 9:45. We've been going at it for damn near 2 hours, dog. I appreciate everybody who tuned in into tonight's live stream. Shout out to everybody in the chat. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, leave us a 5-star review. Do not leave this live stream without giving us a 5-star review, man. Like, if you enjoyed tonight's episode, you had a good time, you had fun, give us a 5-star review, man. It greatly helps us a lot. And the reason why I always beg for 5-star reviews is because, like, it doesn't just help us rank higher when it comes to the podcasting rankings, but it also helps us get sponsorships and brand deals. So go ahead and help your boy out and give us a 5-star review. We're not just a YouTube channel. Every episode of the podcast is available in audio format on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. Give us a 5-star review if you enjoyed tonight's episode and you want to show love and support the podcast. You can go to the links down in the description to Apple and Spotify and give us a 5-star review that way. Or you can type in the JT Sports Podcast and it will pop up. Other than that, that's all that I have for tonight's episode. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys tomorrow, same time, 9:35, 9:45 p.m. Eastern Time, for another episode of the JT Sports Podcast.